The first one that I want to talk about is probably the one I hate the most, and that is like the not like the other girls trope. Because oh my god, this trope drives me insane. An author would tend to write a girl, and the only thing that makes her special is that she's stereotypically not like other girls, and they brag about this like they're proud of it. What does that even mean? That she eats burgers instead of salads? She wears Converse instead of heels, or rolls her eyes at makeup and says things like, I don't hang out with girls, I just get along more with guys. Because I just have to tell you, there's nothing wrong with enjoying lipstick or makeup, dresses, or gossiping with your friends. It doesn't make you shallow and it doesn't make you weak. And being different doesn't automatically make you powerful or interesting. It doesn't make someone less valuable or less strong. Remember when being different used to be a bad thing, by the way? But now it just seems like more and more you find people who are like willing really hard to brag that they're different because they have something wrong with them, or just they make up something because they want to look different, and like they give themselves problems they don't have. It's very strange. They try to hide it with like they call it a strong female character. Half the time it just means she's rude, violent, and strength isn't really just popping off at everybody in the room just because you're tough and then bragging about it. You know, I know some people who are proud to call themselves like, oh yeah, I do this and that, and I tell my boss to go fuck off, and I'm a bitch, and I'm proud of it. It's like, okay, and then you want to wonder why nobody likes you. It doesn't make you tough or special, it just makes you a bitch. These strong female characters can be vulnerable and strong at the same time, okay? There's truth when people say that the kinder you are, the stronger you are. They can still care about people and still be powerful. Some of my favorite examples are, like, let's say Rose from Legend of Dragoon. Mysterious, stoic, she carries a lot of weight, but she still cares about her companions. Or let's say Olivia from Hemlock Grove. Complex, dangerous, but her strength comes from her decisions and her personality. Her flaws, not from tearing other women down. Another one of my favorite examples might be, Sarah Hawkins from Treasure Planet. She's a single mom running an inn, holding her family together through financial strain and grief, all while loving her son as fiercely and protective as possible. She's wearing a dress and an apron, but still manages to run an entire business and take care of her son at the same time, okay? Somehow this morphed into not like the other girls, not equaling cool, strong female characters, meaning not bitch. I mean, you get the point. There's nothing wrong with being like the other girls is what I'm getting at. If you want to wear a dress and you can still be cool and while doing that, there's nothing wrong with that. Number 2 is when there's just too many characters on the page. Somebody might say, oh, too many cooks in the kitchen or whatever. Same concept. And I get it. People love their cast. The more characters, the more chances are there's something for somebody to like. I totally get it. But, sometimes there's just too many characters in the story. It feels less like a book and more like a wedding I didn't want to attend. I kind of see it as like a classroom where the less students there are, the more chances there is for somebody to get individual attention. When the story just has too many people, it's kind of the same concept. Nobody really gets enough time to develop unless the book is like, let's say, The Wheel of Time, where you take fucking 12 books where you can literally go through all. If it's one book and you're trying to take care of like a cast of 8-10 characters, it ain't happening, Captain. It feels like an episode on TV where sometimes you'll have these characters and they just have an excuse that they couldn't be there this week. Oh, so-and-so was sick. They had to go visit their mom, or they're away on business. They got called back, so it's just going to be us for this episode. They do that on purpose. Sometimes get rid of like the extra character or two just to focus a bit on like one or two and their dynamic or a story related to one of them. And you shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to get rid of a character just to focus on another character. I saw that a lot. I know I'm using a lot of like TV references for these book peeves, but it's also a form of writing, and it's visual, so you can connect easier to what I'm trying to explain. But a good example of this is Supernatural. Sometimes when it came down to it, and it was the three of them, like Sam, Dean, and Cass, they would come up with an excuse for Cass not to be there, so they could just focus on Sam and Dean sometimes. And it was just so obvious that he wasn't there on purpose. And that's what I mean. They do that in books a lot too. where they will split them up. So, and then every other chapter will be a different character. And then all of a sudden you have to deal with 12 POVs, and you don't know if they're ever going to connect or not. And not just that, but you might be interested in one character more than another. So it could be this up-down of like looking forward to a chapter that has these characters or stories you like, and then having to go through a chapter that you don't like or don't care about this plot, which is something that can affect pacing, but it can be done right. I mean, look at the greatest example we have is, Lord of the Rings. Every member has their own distinct voice. Sometimes they get separated, but it almost feels like a whole nother story. Sometimes they get separated. Another good example is The Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I mean, there's like so many of them in the group at the same time, but she does a great job of making sure they all get heard. They each have background that comes up. The Percy Jackson series was actually pretty good at this too, except, at least the Heroes of Olympus was, as far as I can remember. Each of them had their distinct time. So I guess I would just rather have a small cast if it's just going to be too much of a problem and you're having to come up with excuses to get them off the page, because that's a huge peeve of mine. It's like when I hear somebody say, oh, so-and-so couldn't be here because they had to do this. I know for a fact they just didn't want them there because they weren't convenient to this plot they wanted to do with these other characters, and it just irks me. Because I'm like, why did you make this character in the first place if you can't involve them in everything that the other characters are doing? Number 3. Don't judge a book by its cover. Because yes, we definitely do judge books by their covers. That's what they're made for. It's marketing. It's the first impression. It's the thing that's supposed to grab you from the shelf. It's why all these people pay thousands of dollars to hire designers, artists, illustrators, and trust me, I know that shit ain't cheap. So let's be real, because we all do it. If the book has a moody, gorgeous fantasy cover on it with like some badass dragon on it, I'm probably more likely to pick that one up than I am a book with like a solid cover made in PowerPoint or some shit. It also tells us the type of book it is. You can tell by the colors, the style. If it's light and pastel colors and it's got these silhouettes, it's probably a rom-com. If it's got this dark, moody on it, it's probably a thriller. So yeah, the cover does absolutely matter, especially if you're blindly picking. I can't stand when a cover doesn't match the story, like false advertising. It just makes you feel really tricked, and that's just an automatic turn off for that book. So yeah, let's not pretend the cover isn't the reason why most of us picked it up in the first place. Number 4, fake morally gray characters. Seems like everybody's doing it these days. I get excited because I love these kind of characters. Messy choices, blurred lines, they make you question if you should even root for them at all. I love that. But then you start reading and it's, surprise, they're actually good people who just occasionally are kind of edgy and say stuff like, oh, I'm not a hero, but they are. It's not really morally gray, it's just like humbly bragging. The real morally gray characters, they do bad things sometimes. They cross lines. I mean, they can still be good people at heart, but sometimes they're forced to do things they don't want to have to do because it's like the lesser evil. They make you uncomfortable, but you can't stop rooting for them because it's like, well, I wouldn't be brave enough to do that, but damn, that was pretty badass. One of them fake morally characters is somebody who's brags about it and then they go steal a loaf of bread because they're like, oh, I need to survive, and then they turn around and then they give it to orphans and then they're like, I'm a monster. It's like, no, you're not. You just want people to think you're a bad boy for some reason. It's lazy branding. You get these characters who rescue a kitten and they're like, oh, I'm darkness incarnate, and it's like, oh my god, Batman does more stuff before breakfast. Okay? So let's a good example here, again, we can go back to Six of Crows. Think of Kaz. It's somebody who people hate him for the choices he makes, but in the end he usually turns out to be right, so you really can't say shit about it. Think of Jaime Lannister also. That's somebody who knows there's nothing wrong with being selfish sometimes, and you have to do things to get ahead. These characters commit terrible acts, but their reasoning behind it is relatable to us as humans because we're not perfect. That's somebody who is like, when you're in the same situation, that you would do the same thing. So don't judge me about it. Those are those kind of characters. So yeah, quit handing me characters who are saints and then calling them morally gray. Next up, number 5 is long chapters with no breaks. This one might sound small at first, but it actually makes a huge difference to my personal reading experience. someone like me, sometimes when I go to pick up a book, I don't always have time to read it. So I'm not looking it up thinking about marathons. Sometimes I just want a quick sprint, a couple pages before bed. You know, I know I'm going to bed too late at like 2:30. I need to get up at like 9, but here I am. I'm like, I just want to read a little bit. But when a chapter goes on for like 40, 50 pages with no pause, I tend to hesitate to pick that book back up because it almost never feels like a good time to read it, knowing that I will actually need to sit down for a while and just be prepared to do nothing but read nonstop. It can be exhausting. Because on the flip side, when I get a book with smaller breaks, I tend to think, oh, okay, I could just read a little bit more and then I'll stop. And then suddenly I've blown through like 100 pages without realizing it. And it's because I have figured out that it's because I only have like a section, say like a page of writing and a little section and then a break. So I'm like, okay, and I tell myself, I'm just going to keep reading to the next break. And then I see that the next break is short. So I'm like, okay, one more break. Okay, maybe just one more. Maybe until I finish the chapter. Next thing you know, I'm 5 chapters ahead. Whereas sometimes I look ahead to see how longer I have to go to the next chapter. And if I just see like 4 or 5 pages of nothing but writing before a break, I'm like, I have to save this for another day. It's just an intimidating bit of psychology, I think. That's all it is. Number 6. This one gets to me a lot. It's also something else that happens a lot in shows. But mostly books with flash forwards. You know what I'm talking about. This is when we get a big, like, startling opening scene or something, and it takes place in the future. Say a character is bleeding out and they're dying in the future. And nothing yanks me out of a book faster. And then chapter 2 goes back 6 months earlier when everything was normal. They're at the table, they're eating cereal or some shit. And I'm sitting here like, well, thanks for spoiling the book. Because every time the stakes are raised up, you know already who's going to win. Who's going to come out on top. There's absolutely no tension in this battle or whatever because you know that one certain character is already alive in the future. If they're bleeding out in chapter 10, but they're bleeding out back in chapter 5, you know they're not going to die because they're alive up to chapter 10. You know what I'm saying? And worse, it makes the present feel like filler. There's a lot of shows that do this. I want to say most recently, I've randomly clicked on that show, Black Rabbit. And it starts, the opening scene, starts like a book is supposed to, with the hook, the action, to where it catches your attention, right? And then it picks up from there. But no, it starts with the place being robbed, and then flash back 6 months earlier. And I'm like, I literally do not care what happened about anything up to this scene, because we know no matter what happens in the past, we're still going to get to this particular point. And now we want to know what happens here. I don't care about this character's daily routine before the action started. It's such a bummer. I mean, it can work, but you have to be really creative about it. I mean, there has to be some kind of twist. Okay, number 7. I don't know what else to call it besides the pronunciation struggle. I want to say it makes something that makes me look really stupid for being smart at the same time. I wonder if I'm the only one who has this problem, but you can go through like 400 pages before ever actually saying a word out loud that you've read on the paper. And then you don't know the whole time that you've mispronounced it in your head because you've never heard it out loud or had to say it out loud. And then when you do, someone's laughing at you because you're pronouncing it wrong. And you had no idea the whole time you were reading it. So this is when being smart can come off as a blessing and a curse. And this one still makes me laugh at myself. But like the biggest example I can think of is that, you know, I love comic books, okay? And I used to read a lot of Superman, but I was always pronouncing Metropolis as Metropolis because I'd only ever read the word and I'd never heard it out loud. So in my head, I just assumed that was the natural pronunciation of it. And when I keep saying it, people are like, why are you saying it like that? And I'm like, I don't know, I thought that's how it was pronounced. It's a bit weird how it happens. But I'm like, okay, excuse me. When you're reading the Lord of the Rings, you have all these names that are mixed together with apostrophes and smashed on a keyboard. You think anybody can pronounce that just one go when they're just like reading it? I've skimmed over Glorfindel over 600 times reading the book. I skimmed that shit. I would just say glove, 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 glove. Every time I would see it, I would say glove something, and I would know that's the same character. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that's very specific happens. Okay, the next one, I want to say is kind of common, and I think it's bigger than I can just skim through in this video, but we're going to talk about the first person POV. Specifically, the lazy kind. I don't want to be a jackass and say all first person sucks, because it absolutely has the capability not to. It just so happens that almost every book I read in first person, I hate. I feel like it's also the reason that we have show don't tell in the first place. And when it's done badly, it just feels like the biggest cop-out that you can take. Like, instead of showing me what's happening, they can tend to say, oh, I feel angry, or I was nervous, or I couldn't believe it. Cool, thanks, diary. But that's not really storytelling. Like, show me how your hands shake when you're furious. Don't tell me you're angry. Show me how your jaw clenches, your chest tightens, and your voice cracks because you're sad. Don't just tell me you're scared. You know, make me feel fear with you. Show me how you're paralyzed and your eyes are wide. I mean, I just feel like it's so easy to not do it is almost a choice. And first person does have so much potential for intimacy, but so many times it's hard to find the good ones because they tend to use it as a shortcut to emotions rather than the show your work kind of thing. It's almost an insult to your intelligence because they're trying to tell you how you should feel right now instead of letting you be moved by that character's situation by yourself. So yeah, I mean, if it reads like a diary, just keep it in a diary. You know what I'm saying? Number 9. This one is kind of combined because it all has to do with names, as in fantasy names and character names in general. Names are a big thing because you're stuck with it. Once you have this character down, you're gonna see this name hundreds of times in the book. Even just naming a character, a lot of people get stuck up on when you're writing a book because names give first impressions of the character. It also describes a character. You know, as in a Jason might come off a little bit more edgy than a David, whom people associate with like a saint. And not every protagonist has to sound like a Final Fantasy boss fight. I know they're trying to be unique, but we're hitting the celebrity name section over here. And on the flip side, I find nothing wrong when readers just want to use simple names like Jason or Timothy. It grounds the story, but the only problem with that is personal experience. I don't know if this happens to y'all, but if I have a character with a real life association with that name, oof, I'm instantly annoyed at that character when they've done nothing wrong. But say I have an ex named Jason who was the worst, and now every time I see the name Jason on the page, I'm automatically annoyed at this character who didn't do anything wrong. And that's not really fair, but I mean, it's something you can't help. And then here's another big offender, is when you have too many characters that start with the same freaking letter. I thought this was like Writer 101. Right now I'm reading Never Flinch by Stephen King. Like, we have Barbara and Betty who are together, and then we also have Jeremy and John. Then we have Chris and Christine. It's a nightmare. I keep mixing them up like I'm taking attendance in homeroom or something. I'm like, 26 letters of the alphabet, and you pick Barbara and Betty to be 2 of your major characters? 10. This kind of goes along with before how I was talking about the fake morally gray or the bitchy not like other girls thing. This tends all to fall into the YA problems, you know, coincidentally. But this is the edgy badass problem. You know what I'm talking about. Everybody hates this when the character is too good, too perfect at something. They never screw up. They can't help but show off how cool or skilled they are. And every fight scene, they just tend to breeze through like an anime protagonist. My blades go brrr. Everyone falls dead. Bow down before me. And I'm like, where's the drama? I want to see my characters lose. I want to see how they handle losing. I want them to make mistakes. I want them to learn from it, and I want them to try again. I want them to bleed a little. Not because I'm some kind of weird sadist, but if a character is untouchable, it feels like their win just wasn't earned. It's like somebody god-modding them. through games, and it's just boring. The best drama comes from these characters who are forced into corners. They don't just like swagger through every fight, and they have to make some questionable choices when they're losing, as in like betray a friend, lie to someone, take a risk that ends up as a consequence later. And it's what makes them feel real. I like the Shaman's Crossing for this one because people always thought Navarre, I don't know, Navarre, because they all thought he was a coward, but that's why it worked, and I love it because it's relatable, and in real life, people flinch, they get scared sometimes. They're not all just going to say, oh, no problem, I've never done this before, but it's no problem for me. They do hesitate, and that's what makes stories believable. And I get it, because we don't always want harsh realities, which is why we read books in the first place. We want the dragons and the magic and the high stakes. But even in fantasy, readers need a character that they can relate to. So I do kind of hate it when people bitch about characters who make wrong choices, and that makes them hate the character. Just because it's not the choice that they would take or that they know better. You know, I don't know. I think it's okay for people to mess up sometimes. Because I want to see somebody who's losing a fight and still manage to come out on top. Who's backed into a corner and they're suddenly forced to play dirty. It's kind of like the whole kill your darlings thing, where sometimes authors are too afraid to make their characters look bad. So they end up coming off as just like... It just ends up backfiring by making them look stupid. Let's continue with number 11. Which would be one that really burns me. I don't know if it's just me, but it's political immersion. This might ruffle some feathers just because of how intense things are these days when it comes to politics in general. But I just have to say, I hate it. I can't stand when authors take the opportunity to throw their real world politics into a book where it doesn't belong. Specifically their opinions. And I don't mean politics as a theme and a plot, because it's amazing, and when it's in a lot of our favorite books. Say Game of Thrones, for example, relies on this. Dune is basically a huge, long power play. That's part of the world building. Okay, so that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when an author sneaks their personal opinion into the narrative, and they kind of veil it as government commentary or social critique. Like, suddenly a character in a medieval environment is bitching about taxes, and it comes off more as a Facebook post. And, like, I don't even care if the opinion matches mine or not. Like, I don't care if we are totally in agreement about the opinion. It still pulls me out of the story, because that's not what I'm here for. I didn't open the book to read a think piece. And I don't care about what the author thinks about who our governor is right now. And if it's any different, it's still not going to change my opinion. So why put it into your fantasy book? I'm confused. Now, I'm not saying books can't explore tough themes at all, but there's just a huge difference between weaving like fake politics and name dropping real world politics just because you want to whine. I'm just saying, at the bare minimum, I'm asking not to read The Witcher and Geralt goes on a sudden rant about Trump. All these monsters wouldn't be roaming the forest if Trump wasn't president. Like, what? I don't care that you hate Trump. I just want to see Geralt fight some of these monsters. And following on to that one, we have number 12, which is religious immersion. I bitched about this a lot in my familiar review, and nothing takes me out of the book more. I can't stand it when the author thinks it's being clever by like disguising its characters as like a play, that each one is supposed to represent something in religion. Say it's some kind of metaphor about God, Jesus, sin or salvation, or whatever the author's personal doctrine happens to be. Let's say I was reading The Phoenix Brigade, some random book I picked up at like Dollar General, and the whole thing was just like a religious thing about the Savior and fighting evil and all this. I'm just like, same thing with The Familiar. You know, they made it sound like this cool book that takes place in Spain, and this witch. And the whole thing was actually just about how much she hated the Catholic Church and men in general. You could have just told us that instead of like faking an actual story. And I don't really care what the message is, because I'd feel the same way whether, again, it agreed with me or it didn't. It's not going to change my opinion at all, just because the author wants to throw a line or two in there every other page. If anything, it's just going to annoy me into wanting to stop reading this book, because you're wasting my time with things I already know. And I'm not saying religion in general is like a no for me, dog, but in world building, it has to work and it has to make sense to the story. Say like how Brandon Sanderson does it in his Cosmere books. It feels authentic to the story because they belong to the world, not because the author wants to use it for his own sermon on how he feels about religion in real life. Like, I'm just not here for the whole sermon and the you get it? Okay, number 13. This is a more lighthearted, specific, let's go with the docs being shady trope in world building. I know, this is such a random thing to pick on, but I guess I've read it so much it was on my list as I was writing. But can we like just retire the idea that automatically all docks are the shady places in fantasy cities? Like the second someone says, oh, we're gonna meet down at the docks, you know what's gonna happen, right? It's gonna be misty, there's gonna be a lot of crates, some shady guy in a cloak is gonna be lurking somewhere, and somebody's gonna get stabbed before the scene is over. It's just so cliche. It's like, oh, follow me down in this alley, little girl. But really, it's like we're going to the docks. I mean, because the truth is, the docks are just kind of gross, busy, loud, smelly. People are hauling cargo everywhere. I mean, it might be really intense with the marketing, should we say? Like, oh, people trying to push and sell their stuff. Yeah, because trade come and go right there. But that doesn't mean every shady person in town is going to hang out at the docks. What happened to the shady tavern at Sunrise? Or how about a shady bakery that's a front for a thief ring? I don't know. There just has to be some other way you can do this, okay? Come on. Next up, we have 14. All adults are stupid, and the kids know everything. This is a very big pet peeve when it comes to YA. When every adult is considered useless, and the kids just magically know everything. I mean, it kind of explains itself. I say there's a lot of times when the younger kid is stressed or panicking, and the adult just kind of shrugs past it or pats him on the head and goes like, you're just imagining things. Or they just ignore every red flag because apparently grown-ups have no ability to recognize trauma, danger, or even basic logic. Like, they've never been a teenager before. Or they just wouldn't understand, so we can't tell them. It's just a bit insulting, I think, to us adult readers. Because they don't have to be perfect, they just don't have to be stupid. You know, like, the kid says, oh, I can't tell my parents, they wouldn't understand. They wouldn't let me go fight all these bad guys. So me, the 12-year-old, is gonna do it instead. Are you kidding me? Are you trying to tell me that your dad doesn't stand a better chance at fighting these guys than you do, who's probably never even learned to drive yet? You're telling me no teacher, no parent, no random adult on the street would think, maybe I should stop and call the police, since this child is clearly being hunted by demons. But instead they're like, come on, sweetheart, it's probably nothing. So can we just stop like treating adults like they're too dumb to just call 911? I think I really love The Lord of the Flies for this, because it proved how pivotal society is, and what happens to kids and how they just like absolutely fall apart without their parents and their guidance and the authority, because that's in reality that's what would happen. Number 15 is the same setting over and over again. If I pick up another book set in New York City, I might just actually scream. Like, we get it, it's a city that never sleeps. Okay, yes, it's glamorous, it's gritty, it's familiar, but also New York on a map, if you look at it, it's like this compared to all these other states that are like the size of this, okay? And again, it's like 80% of books take place there. New York, LA, London, skyscrapers, yellow taxis, Central Park. New York has been done to death. It's like the author thinks there's only 3 cities. If it's not that, it's some vague European fantasy kingdom. It starts to feel like the entire world takes place on one street corner. And it's such a wasted opportunity because there's so many other places bursting with character, history, and culture. So why don't more books tap into that, okay? Like here, I live in Louisiana, and let me tell you, we have some stories here, okay? There's a lot of things people never hear of that are very vaguely, very familiar, normal to me. And it just shocks me. And people don't know, what a rougarou is or the glee and stuff like that. I'm like, you serious? We got spooky bayous, we got Mardi Gras, we got jazz, and it's just begging for stories. And it's not a whole Southern pride thing. Every state has something special about it. I would like to see more books diving into some city in Nebraska, somewhere in Ohio, somewhere in Idaho, instead of giving us just another coffee shop in Brooklyn. It's also something that takes me out of the story when a fantasy story, say like the Percy Jackson stuff, or even like Shadowhunters, say like it takes place and it's a fantasy, but it takes place secretly in the town. A lot of it takes place in New York, but a lot of people can't see the fantasy stuff because they're not involved with it. I hate it. Like, I hate urban settings with a fantasy thing. I don't know, it just doesn't mix for me. So why not a fantasy in the Appalachian Mountains? How about a thriller in the deserts of Arizona? I'm just saying, I like somewhere new. And that is why I kind of do like Stephen King's books for that also, because he always puts us somewhere, usually, yes, in the Northeast, say Maine, Oregon, whatever, but it's not, here's New York again. Number 16, weak voiced characters. I'm talking like literally weak voiced characters. I don't mean like, oh, I hate shy characters or whatever. No, because you can still have a shy character and they still have their own tone and voice meant for that when you read it, you hear it. But sometimes you get these random characters. This is a short one because it's so specific. But how do I explain this? Sometimes I'm reading, let's say these two characters are talking and there's two guys. I'll be reading a male POV, but the way the dialogue and inner dialogue, it makes him sound very timid, and his voice in my head, I'm reading sounds almost like a female's, should I say, because like it comes off as this very high-pitched, nervous, and like it's not meant to be. 17. This is another very specific one. But it happens a lot. Enough for me to put it on this list. That's the endless, the what? 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 What do you mean? Huh? Say like when we're having this moment. I read this very recently in The Devils, okay, with Brother Diaz. They're having a moment, you sit down to somebody and everybody is all trying to explain what's happening to this one character who's suddenly involved, and everything he tries to say gets interrupted with what? 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 Like, and I get it, they're confused. I'm confused too, but we don't need someone going blah 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 blah. What? And then so and so, what? How does that happen? What do you mean? How come? What? Why can't we just have like one quick interruption and go, oh, okay, I see. I don't understand what's going on, but I'll try my best. What now? That's it, okay? Not what? Huh? What do you mean? How come? Why? We don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need it. 18, another very common one. The rest of these I think are pretty common because they're so big. But it's the purple prose. The overly flowy writing that is so busy trying to be beautiful that it makes it hard to read and you don't really read anything. You know what I'm talking about. Instead of saying he ran, it turns into his legs propelled him forward like a wind-whipped sail of a forgotten galleon. His breath a symphony of anguish against the yawning void of the night. Like, sorry, he just ran across the street. Calm down. A lot of things are bad for this, you know. They drip with adjectives and metaphors. $10 words. I don't want to read your poetry. Stephen King actually said it best. Never say emolument when you meant tip. Because simple writing doesn't mean bad writing. In fact, it's better to let you like feel the scene instead of trying to show off. And I'm not saying dumb it down either, because then it's like, it's just immature and it's a different audience and stuff. You don't need, he did that, she did this, she did that, he did that, he did that. I'm just saying you don't have to be extra about it. A good example of this would be, I was reading The Queen of Hearts a while back. And it's a book about some surgeons. And I want to say the author might be a surgeon, which is how she knew so much about the topic she was writing about. But I think it accidentally came off when she was writing. So every paragraph felt extremely thesaurus-like, as if she was trying to impress a college itinerary. I don't know. It's just unnecessary. We can use plain English and be fine. And number 19, we have fake cliffhangers. I hate when a chapter ends on this huge dramatic note. The door bursts open, somebody comes in and they're panicking, and someone screams and you're like, oh my god, what happened? I need to find out. And you turn the page and then you find out it's just like somebody's walking in with a sandwich and they dropped it or something. And it's like, really? You faked me out for that? It happens in books, but it's even worse in TV shows when like they build up this conversation and they have some intense music as if like, oh, this is an urgent thing we need to take care of now. And like the world is ending and the next episode starts and it's literally just two characters having a slightly awkward conversation. So like it's not that urgent because they can do something about it, but they made it seem urgent before. It just makes you not trust the story. Like we're doing the old boy cried wolf thing. And the last one, number 20. It's also very common, mostly with like YA stuff. But it does happen. This is when every protagonist has dead parents, aka the orphans. Because why does it feel like every protagonist has to have dead parents in order to be like the chosen one? And of course, tragedy can shape a character's arc. I'm not saying don't kill the parents. You know, orphans like Harry Potter, that actually matters to the plot. I hate to go old school, but I think it was done particularly well in Naruto. I don't know why I'm bringing this up at like 34, but I distinctly remember how they used to kind of argue because Sasuke would be emo about like his parents being killed. Naruto would argue with him going, oh well, at least you had parents. And then he would get kind of sad about it and feel lonely sometimes because, and then Sasuke would argue back, you know, well, you never had parents, so you don't know what it feels like to lose parents. But the same other spectrum, Naruto would say, well, I never had parents, so I've been alone the whole time. And it kind of reminds me of that when it's done right. I don't understand why there's hardly scenes. I mean, I guess I should explain it as to why I feel like the author thinks having a family would hold a character back. Not saying it doesn't happen, because it happens a lot in real life. I just mean, you hardly see ones with like, oh, you're having dinner with your family. And I guess because they feel like they couldn't leave their family. They needed to go on a journey or something. But I mean, I'd rather see a story where, say you're on a journey or something, and then you make a quick stop off home. Say, oh, let's go back to Legend of Dragoon, okay? Labbits is a good example of this. You're traveling with him, but then you go back into town, the city for the plot or whatever, and you happen to pass through his hometown and you stop so he can visit his mother and let her know he's all right, what they're doing, he's got to go see the king and all this stuff, and then you continue the next day on your quest. And it also gives you a chance for him to explain a little bit about the hometown. I like that a lot. I prefer that like the parent doesn't have to be dead in order for a character to exist. It's strange. And that's everything. That's all I have for all these annoying book pet peeves. Why are there so many? Why do I read when this many things annoy me? But seriously, it's not a big deal. It's just some stuff I noticed that like just it happens a lot. It makes me kind of want to throw the book across the room, but I ain't gonna do that. And there's some things that you probably love that I can't stand, and vice versa, things that you don't like and I do. That's all I have to say though. Thanks for hanging out with me, and until next time.